So this is an old file with old documents on European action for racial equality and social justice.
The European Action for Racial Equality and Social Justice was an alliance set up in 1989, following the combined delegation from England and Scotland, the mission to Maastricht. It was organised by John LaRose, and his theme was "Don't wait until the ovens begin to burn. Act now," a phrase Malcolm X had once coined. I became involved as at the time I was the interim chair of the organising committee of the International Book Fair of Radical Black and Third World Books, which had drawn writers from across the three continents, and which had been held annually from 1982 right up to 1985. I'd been introduced to John LaRose by Talochin Ora, one of the participants in the Maastricht events. This led to intense discussions between myself and John in subsequent years in his home. I call them discussions. Typically it was John who spoke, coaching and passing on his thoughts and stretching my understanding. But that was how he organised events such as the book fairs, through an instinctive grasp of the essence of the individuals he knew. Some of us went by train to Maastricht, while John LaRose met us there with other activists from Britain and from different parts of Europe. As was always the case, with ventures John initiated, participation had grown exponentially.
My involvement in European action started with the book fair in the early 1990s, I would say. 23rd of March 1990, I spoke at a workshop or a conference on the rise of racism and fascism in Europe and the European response. The content of that meeting, public meeting, with Ian MacDonald, John LaRose, myself and others, has been published in a small booklet, in English of course, and the main focus of my topic was on the Marche pour l'égalité et contre le racisme. So I think in the name of this initiative, which took place in France, from Marseille to Paris in 1983, you already had this idea of fighting both for equality and social justice. So that is a kind of connection and political agreement that we already had with the comrades in Britain of the Black Parents Movement, the Alliance, etc. After this meeting at the book fair, I participated in many discussions about what's going on in Europe at the first stage of reuniting Germany and Europe, preparing the Maastricht Treaty and so on.
By the time we all met up in Maastricht, December 1991, the following groups were participating. We had all come there because what we wanted with John to draw attention to the rising levels of extreme right-wing attacks on racial minorities. We had already experienced this in the UK, but this was an important opportunity to develop links and extend our solidarity across Europe. We went there with our placards, our banners, and leaflets. We handed out a leaflet, written in Dutch, which publicised the press conference we were organising, and explained the central theme as to why we were there. Don't wait until the ovens begin to burn. Our activities were covered in a variety of European newspapers, with pictures of members of the delegation. I brought back these newspapers, and they are, I believe, in our archive. When we returned to the UK, John organised an inaugural meeting to formally launch European Action for Racial Equality and Social Justice at the Dominion Centre in Southall. Our inaugural meeting sought to pull together individuals who had led many local and national British campaigns, and individuals active in trade unions and independent associations such as black workers' groups.
We tried in autumn 1990 to organize a secretariat meeting in Paris, because I got involved on a personal level, and but we wanted also other comrades from France involved in different anti-racist or migrant issues to participate also. We also organized a workshop with comrades from Britain, John LaRose, Gus Jones, Suresh Goa and others, comrades from Italy as well. The workshop was about the changes happening within the working class in Europe, and what could we think about Europe, institutions and social change. Of course, the main issues were about migrants, racism, and the situation of migrants and refugees. So just after the workshop, John LaRose and Gus John and others, they participated in a meeting, a public meeting we organized at the Bourse du Travail in Paris against the double peine, which is double penalty for migrants who have been in prison and who are deported after their prison. This campaign was against this double penalty, trying to abolish the double peine. The main focus of European action was on the rise of racism in Europe, and especially in Germany after the fall of the Berlin Wall in '89. And the role of Ian MacDonald was very important at that time to tackle the issue of legal situation of migrants in Europe and how to try to improve them. This brought us to a campaign which was named Monitoring Germany. In London during the book fairs and at the carnival and other moments, we met a number of young black Germans, men and women, who escaped from Germany because of so many racist attacks and racist or even fascist atmosphere in some areas. And they had some kind of relief, some kind of ease in Britain, especially in cities like London or Birmingham and so on. So they used to come to London. Some even lived there for some months or some years. And we made some very interesting connections, like Ni Adi or John Amwateng and others. They were interested in what we were doing with Agence Immédiat. And actually, Ni and John, they came for a training scheme in Paris with Agence Immédiat. And then we had the idea to produce a number of films on racist attacks in Germany first, and the migrants' response. So one of the important films, one of the first ones, I think, is Germany, the Other Story, which was done, produced and directed by myself in conjunction with John Amwateng and Ken Ferro from the migrant media group in London, etc. So that was the first one. Then we did Britain's Black Legacy on the struggles of the black communities in Britain, and other films. For France, we made Sweet France, which was shown on Channel 4 in '92. The series was called Europe Communities of Resistance. Actually, they were shown at the book fair in 1993. Linton Kwesi Johnson also came to Mantes-la-Jolie for an initiative called Caravane 92. We screened the film Britain's Black Legacy, and he spoke afterwards, and then he gave a great concert at Mantes-la-Jolie on stage. Well, we also published a lot of articles. Already in 1990, we published this book, which is L'Europe multicommunautaire, with a group called Plein Droit, La Revue de Justice, which is a group studying the law concerning migrants. And we have a lot of contributions from here and there in Britain. Ian MacDonald, Ken Farrow, Roxy Harris talking about the supplementary schools and the Black Parents Movement. A section of this is on the working class and the changes of the working class in Europe, especially after a great strike which took place in the factory Peugeot, one of the biggest factories in France. Well, basically that is how we were working together with the people who are part of the European Action. The main activities took place in 1990 till 1993-94. We kept the connections, but we didn't attend, or I didn't attend so much the organizational meetings of European Action. But we kept in touch, and even today some connections remain. For instance, we do work with, still do work with migrant media around their films on racist attacks, police killings, their film Injustice, ultra-violence, etc. We also recently participated in a film on Black Lives Matter, in which John Amoteng, a former trainee, was involved, and is going to be shown on television, French, German, Arte television, and so on. Of course, we participate as much as we can in developing work with GPI, the Georges Padmore Institute. We would like to develop the film section of Georges Padmore Institute, because actually we have a lot of archive material, and young people today, they are keen seeing and knowing more about all these struggles which took place in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. So it is important that this archive material get public, and with the new means of distribution such as internet, the websites and so on, we hope that people will be able to check this material and to combine pictures with written matters. We don't want to separate the things, because obviously I've shown you this huge, this big file. It's one of my big number of files. It's full of, documentation showing how, practically meaning, the European Action Group was trying to meet a draft constitution. So I hope people will go to GPI after seeing these videos and so on, and check the minutes of and the documentation of the European Action Group to know more about it. It seems to me very important today to rethink the European network and connections after the Brexit, which is, we don't talk much about it. I'm astonished because it's a catastrophe when you see how now European migrants in Britain are treated like former Windrush generation or the Asian or Black African migrants. Now they find out that, okay, now we understand what you are talking about when you are asking for equal rights, political rights, for instance, the right to vote. In France, before the Brexit, you had several hundreds of British citizens living in France who had the right to vote and to be elected, and who were part of council, of city councils and so on. And from one day to another, they lost all their political rights. So now we are trying to gather to put on the agenda again equal rights for migrants, no matter where they come from, and we hope they will join the ongoing campaigns under the slogan "J'y suis, j'y vote," here to stay, I vote, or I will vote.
In my view, one of the important legacies of European action for racial equality and social justice has been to cement the notion that people from different parts of Europe can combine together and intervene in events such as the Maastricht Treaty. In subsequent years, Maastricht participants would come together, quite often at the international book fairs of radical Black and Third World books at Camden Council venues, where the Camden Black Workers Group was based. Because of my involvement with the book fairs, I was twice invited to Trinidad and Tobago by the Oilfield Workers Trade Union, the OWTU, of which John LaRose had been a founding member, to participate at their annual delegate conferences and associate meetings, involving trade unions right across the Caribbean. In the OWTU's building were huge portraits of their important founding members, including their comrade John. The commitment of ordinary members at these meetings was striking. Each ordinary branch meeting would begin with trade union songs such as Solidarity Forever, The Union Makes Us Strong. Clearly, they were a part of John LaRose, just as he had been a part of them. These songs were also a fundamental part of their annual delegate conferences. I mentioned this when I reported back to my trade union colleagues, how it was immediately obvious how much they recognized John LaRose was one of them, and clearly they were a part of him. For me, it was a significant learning point about the very essence of trade union involvement in that first-class trade union in Trinidad and Tobago. The archive collection about the European action for racial equality and social justice is important now and for future generations because it demonstrates how John LaRose was able to initiate events which fostered solidarity between individual European countries in a way that struck a chord between the individuals involved, captured in the comments of many of the individuals who attended our press conferences and in the photographs of the European newspapers.